Urban legends are usually just stories, exaggerated tales told to scare kids, or passed down so many times they don't even make sense anymore. But every once in a while, you hear about people who swear they've had real encounters with them. And sometimes the scariest part isn't whether the story is true or not. It's that you'll never really know. Here are 3 allegedly true urban legend encounters. The Thing in the Woods. I grew up in a small rural town in Pennsylvania. It wasn't the kind of place you'd find on a map unless you zoomed in really close. A handful of streets, a gas station, a diner, a couple of mom-and-pop shops, and then just miles and miles of farmland and trees. Behind my neighborhood, though, there was a stretch of woods that seemed endless. Thick, dark, and silent. As kids, we treated those woods like they were our playground. We built forts, rode our bikes along the dirt trails, and cut through them when we wanted to get to each other's houses quicker. During the day, they weren't so bad. Just trees, birds, and the occasional deer bounding across the brush. But at night, those woods were different. The air felt heavy, the silence pressed in on you, and it always felt like something was watching from deeper inside. Everyone in town had heard the story. The Thing in the Woods. That's what people called it, like it didn't even need a real name. It was the kind of story older kids would whisper to scare you at sleepovers. The descriptions never matched. Some said it was a man, tall, gaunt, with arms that hung too long at his sides. Others swore it was animal-like, something that walked on 2 legs but moved like no person could. The only thing that stayed the same in every version was that it didn't make sound when it moved. You'd hear footsteps or breathing or feel it watching. But when it shifted through the trees, there was no sound at all. I never believed any of it. At least not until one night when I was 16. It was a Friday in late October. My friend Chris had thrown a little get-together at his house. Just a few of us hanging out, playing games, eating junk food, and talking about stupid stuff. Around 11 at night, I decided to head home. My parents didn't care too much if I stayed out late, but the walk wasn't long, and I had school the next day. Normally, I would have just taken the road, but the shortcut through the woods cut the walk in half. I had done it hundreds of times before. That night, the air was cold enough that you could see your breath. I pulled my hoodie tighter and clicked on the flashlight on my phone before stepping into the trees. The moment I crossed under the branches, the sound of the neighborhood faded. The houses, the faint hum of cars from the highway, it all just disappeared. All I could hear were my footsteps crunching on dead leaves. About halfway through, I heard it, a branch snapping behind me. I froze, whipping my light back over the path. The beam illuminated only trunks and shadows. Nothing moved. My chest felt tight, but I told myself it was just a deer. There were tons of them around there. Sometimes they darted across the trails at night, scaring the hell out of you before vanishing again. That had to be it. I kept walking. But then, a few steps later, I noticed something strange. Whenever I walked, I heard another sound, a faint extra footstep behind mine. I would stop, and then it would stop. I tried it again, walking slower. Step, step. Then, from somewhere behind me, faint and deliberate. Step, step. The silence between us was suffocating. I could hear my own breathing quicken. My palms were sweaty on the phone as I slowly turned the light back. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't clear, not fully, not the kind of thing you get a good look at. But in the instant before my light passed over the tree line, I saw something tall, pale, and wrong move behind a trunk. The shape of a shoulder, maybe a face, but stretched too far, too thin. My stomach dropped into ice. I froze, my light shaking in my hand. The path behind me was empty again. Nothing but trees swaying lightly in the wind. My throat went dry. I told myself I was imagining it, that my mind was playing tricks. I turned and forced myself to walk faster. That's when I heard it again, breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Coming from somewhere just past the edge of the light. That was it. Instinct took over. I ran. My flashlight beam bounced wildly as I tore down the dirt trail, leaves and branches cracking under my sneakers. Every few seconds, out of the corner of my eye, I swore I saw something darting between the trees, too tall, too fast. keeping pace with me. I didn't dare slow down. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. The moment the trees broke and I burst into the glow of the streetlights, the sounds stopped. No more footsteps, no more breathing, nothing, just silence. I didn't look back. I sprinted all the way up the street, through my front yard, and into the house. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and stood there in the hallway, trying to catch my breath. My parents were asleep. I didn't wake them. I didn't even know how to explain what I had just seen. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every groan of the pipes made me jump. I swore I could still hear it, faint and far off, waiting for me. The next morning, I told Chris and another friend about it. They laughed at first, saying I had just psyched myself out, but eventually they agreed to come with me. We went back into the woods in daylight. The trail looked normal, quiet, harmless, almost peaceful. But when we searched around, we found something. About 20 feet off the path, one of the trees had fresh claw marks carved deep into the bark. For long gouges, rough and jagged, like something had raked its hand or paw down it. The unsettling part was how high up they were, higher than any of us could have reached even if we jumped. We just stood there staring at it. None of us said much. Eventually, Chris muttered something about bears, but even he didn't sound like he believed it. I never took that shortcut again. From then on, I stuck to the road no matter how long it took. And to this day, I don't know what I saw in those woods. Some people still say it's just an urban legend, a story kids pass around to freak each other out. But I know what I heard that night. I know what I saw, even if it was only for a second. And I know I wasn't alone in those woods. For more real-life horror stories that will keep you awake tonight, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If this story unsettled you, drop a like. It helps a lot. This story didn't happen to me directly. It happened to my uncle in the late 90s. He's not the type of person to exaggerate or make things up, and he's always been a pretty straightforward, no-nonsense guy. He doesn't talk about ghosts or the paranormal, but the way he told this story, and the look in his eyes when he did, still makes me uneasy to this day. It was late one winter night, sometime after midnight. My uncle was driving home from a late shift at work. The quickest way back to his house was an old back road that cut through miles of farmland and wooded hills. Hardly anyone used that road at night because it was so dark and isolated. He remembered it being one of those nights where the cold just sank into your bones. His old pickup didn't have great heat, and his windshield kept fogging up at the edges. He was halfway down the road when his headlights cut across something on the shoulder. At first, he thought it was a deer or maybe someone whose car had broken down. But as he slowed down, he realized it was a woman. She was standing just a few feet from the asphalt, one arm raised with her thumb out, like she was trying to hitch a ride. She wasn't dressed for the weather at all. My uncle noticed right away how strange her outfit looked. She had on a long skirt that brushed against her ankles, and a light sweater buttoned halfway up. Her shoes looked old-fashioned too, like something you'd see in a thrift shop, black flats, scuffed and thin. What really unsettled him, though, was her expression or lack of one. She didn't look frantic or desperate, the way you'd expect someone stranded on the side of the road at night to look. She just stood there calmly, almost like she had been waiting for him. Against his better judgment, he slowed the truck and pulled over. He told me later that he couldn't explain why he stopped. Part of him wanted to just keep driving, but he said something about the way she stood there made it hard to ignore. She opened the back passenger door and climbed in quietly. He said she didn't smell like anything. Not perfume, not sweat, not even the faint chill of the night air. She just didn't have a presence the way people usually do when they sit beside you. "Where you headed?" my uncle asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. She told him an address a few miles further down the road, closer to town. He drove, trying to make small talk. He asked if she was okay, if her car had broken down, or if someone was supposed to pick her up. She never answered those questions. She just stared out the window, her face turned away, watching the dark fields roll by. My uncle said the whole ride was unnerving. Every time he looked in the rearview, He could see her there, still silent, eyes locked on the night outside. She never once looked directly at him. Finally, he turned onto the road where she said she lived. A small cluster of houses sat at the end, dim porch lights glowing in the cold. He pulled up in front of the address she had given and shifted the truck into park. When he turned in his seat to tell her they were there, the back seat was empty. No sound, no click of a door, no movement. She was just gone. He swore he didn't take his eyes off the road for more than a second before turning back. But somehow, she had vanished completely. His heart started racing. He leaned into the back seat, pushing at the cushions, checking the floorboards, even the lock on the door. Nothing. He sat there in stunned silence for a long time, his breath fogging the inside of the glass. The longer he sat, the more he realized he couldn't just drive away, not without knowing what had happened. Finally, he climbed out of the truck and walked up the driveway to the house. He knocked, and after a few moments, an older couple answered. They looked tired, like he had woken them from sleep. My uncle stammered as he tried to explain. He said he had just picked up a young woman on the road, that she'd asked to be dropped at this address. But when he arrived, she wasn't in the truck anymore. He asked if maybe they had a daughter who fit that description, or if someone from the house had been out walking. The couple exchanged a long look before the woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was a sadness in it. She told him their daughter had died in a car accident on that very stretch of road. It had happened decades earlier, back in the late 1960s. The description my uncle gave of the woman's clothing, it matched exactly what their daughter had been wearing the night she died. They didn't look surprised. In fact, the man just nodded knowingly. The woman told my uncle he wasn't the first person to knock on their door with that story. Over the years, other drivers had claimed to pick her up in the exact same spot. Some saw her disappear from the side of the road. Others, like my uncle, swore she vanished from inside their car. She thanked him for being kind enough to stop. Then she gently closed the door. My uncle drove home in silence, too shaken to turn on the radio or think about anything else. He told me later that it was one of the few times in his life where he felt like reality had slipped, that something impossible had happened, and there was no explanation that would ever make sense. He never drove that road at night again. Even now, when the story comes up, he refuses to embellish it or laugh it off. He'll just say, "It happened, and I'll never forget it." And the way his voice shakes when he says it, I believe him. For more real-life horror stories that will keep you awake tonight, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If this story unsettled you, drop a like. It helps a lot. This story happened to me, and even now, years later, I still don't know if what I saw that night was a person, some kind of intruder, or something else entirely. When I was 12 years old, my family lived in a one-story ranch-style house on the edge of town. It wasn't completely isolated. We had a few neighbors, but our backyard was large and bordered by a stretch of thick woods. There was a chain-link fence at the back, but beyond that was nothing but trees for miles. My bedroom was tucked in the back corner of the house, and it had a big window that looked out over the yard. My bed was pushed up against that wall, with the headboard just a few feet away from the glass. At night, if I rolled over, I could see right into the backyard. Most nights, I liked it. In summer, I'd lie there and watch the fireflies float over the grass. In fall, I'd see the leaves scatter across the lawn. And in winter, I'd watch the moonlight glint off the snow. But as I got older, I began to notice how exposed it really made me. If someone were standing in the yard at night, they'd be able to see directly into my room, see me lying there unaware. That thought unsettled me sometimes, but never enough to lose sleep over. Until one night, it was the middle of winter, the kind of night where the cold seems to sink through the walls of the house. My parents had gone to bed early, and the only sound in the house was the heater clicking on and off. I woke up sometime after midnight because my throat was dry. Half asleep, I sat up to grab the bottle of water on my nightstand. That's when I noticed movement in the glass of my window. At first, I thought it was my reflection shifting in the dim light. But then it blinked. I froze. My reflection couldn't blink. My stomach dropped as I realized there was someone outside my window. It was a man. He was standing just a few feet away, staring directly in at me. The glass between us suddenly felt paper thin, like it wouldn't matter if it was there at all. His face was pale, so pale it almost glowed in the moonlight. His skin looked unnatural, grayish and tight, but it was his eyes that made my blood run cold. They weren't normal. They were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just two endless voids where his eyes should have been. He didn't move. He didn't tap the glass or try to open the window. He just stood there, his face almost pressed to the glass, those black eyes locked onto mine. I can't explain the feeling that came over me in that moment. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper. My body seemed to know before my brain did that what I was seeing wasn't right. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to move, not to make a sound. I wanted to scream for my parents. I wanted to leap out of bed and run down the hall. But I couldn't. I couldn't breathe, couldn't even blink. I was frozen, trapped by those eyes. Felt like time stopped. I don't know if it was seconds or minutes, but it felt like forever. I just sat there, my body trembling, while that thing, whatever it was, stared in at me. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. 1 second, its pale face was inches from the glass. The next, the space outside my window was empty. I didn't see it turn. I didn't hear footsteps crunching in the frost. It was just gone, like it had never been there at all. The moment it disappeared, my body finally broke free from whatever had been holding me still. I scrambled backward off the bed, nearly tripping over my blanket, and pressed myself against the far wall of the room. My chest heaved as I tried to suck in air. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the edge of the nightstand. I wanted to run to my parents' room, but I was terrified that if I stepped into the hallway, I'd see it again, waiting just outside another window, or worse, already inside the house. So I stayed where I was, curled up in the corner, staring at the glass until the first light of dawn finally crept into the room. When the sun came up, I cautiously pulled back the curtains and looked outside. The yard was covered in frost, a thin silvery layer that sparkled in the morning light. And right there, directly in front of my window, the grass was pressed flat. Two distinct spots, side by side, the size of feet. It was as if someone had been standing there for hours. The frost around the impressions was undisturbed. No footprints leading to or away from them. Just those two flattened patches, facing the glass. I didn't tell my parents right away. I didn't know how. Part of me was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Another part of me was scared that if I said it out loud, it would somehow invite him back. So instead, I pretended everything was normal. But that night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in that room again. When the sun went down, I lay there for hours, staring at the curtains, waiting for a pale face to appear behind them. Finally, I grabbed my pillow and blanket and tiptoed into the living room. I slept on the couch with the glow of the TV on, and for the first time since it happened, I was able to close my eyes without feeling like I was being watched. That became my new routine. I'd pretend to go to bed in my room, wait until my parents were asleep, then sneak out to the living room with my blanket. After a while, my parents noticed and asked why I was sleeping on the couch. I told them my room was too cold, or that I liked falling asleep to the TV. I never told them the truth. Weeks went by. I never saw the man again, but the memory of those black eyes never left me. They were burned into my mind, and even now, all these years later, I can still see them when I close my eyes in the dark. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trespasser, some sick person who got a kick out of scaring kids. But that doesn't explain the eyes, or the way he vanished without a sound. Maybe it was a dream or sleep paralysis, some trick of the mind. But the pressed grass the next morning proves it wasn't just in my head. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what it wanted. All I know is that those eyes weren't human. And I never slept in that bedroom again after dark. And that's going to do it for tonight's video. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. It helps out a lot. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more true scary stories like these every week. Which of the 3 encounters did you find the creepiest? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. And remember, Sometimes the stories we grow up hearing aren't just legends after all.